你们会用数字人民币不？
Huang Dan just paid with a new type of money at this pharmacy.
可以了。
That's because China's paper cash is going digital.
就是把你的钱包放到了手机里面。
The digital yuan is meant to be faster than using credit or debit cards on digital wallets like Apple Pay. Plus, there are other incentives, like zero transaction fees for merchants, and one day it'll even work offline. But one major difference is that the digital yuan is 100% trackable by China's central bank. And when it's launched nationwide, it could impact not only citizens, but also foreign companies operating in the country.
The central bank will know who's paying, how much they're paying, when they're paying, where they're paying, and then to analyze the patterns of payment.
China's central bank has also said it plans to gradually replace all cash and coins with the digital yuan. The country would be the first major economy to introduce a digital currency in the real world. And while many users say the digital yuan is easy to use, China's money revolution could usher in privacy concerns.
平时更多的场景还是会带手机。
Using the phone to pay isn't a new concept for Huang, since he's one of about 770 million mobile payment users in China who rely on digital wallets like Ant Group's Alipay and Tencent's WeChat Pay. These private tech firms hold data on transactions, which the government can access. But because the digital yuan is developed by the central bank, there are no third parties, and that data sits with the government.
它是用你的身份证号和姓名来去做登记的。
To begin testing the digital currency online and in physical stores, last year the Chinese central bank started doling out digital cash through public lotteries in cities across China. Huang is one of the 750,000 people who have won some piece of the $23 million prize in the past year. To start spending his $30 worth of winnings, Huang first downloaded the digital yuan app.
要不是商家来扫你的二维码，要么是你去扫商家的二维码。
It recorded that he spent money on lunch and medicine one Saturday afternoon in the southwestern city of Chengdu.
他现在每个商家的门口都会贴一个告示，对，就是他说我接受数字人民币。
About 10,000 merchants in Chengdu have signed up to accept digital yuan.
数字红包可以使用的。
Zhong Jiayin manages a dumpling restaurant, and she said the digital yuan has some advantages compared with other payment options.
现在就是多了一个付款方式嘛，而且他们不收手续费哦，我们肯定很乐意的。
For instance, two of China's most popular digital wallets charge merchants an average of 0.6% for every transaction. There's also another upside in the works. The central bank is planning to make transactions possible even without an internet connection. So restaurants like Zhong's won't have to worry about their spotty connections that sometimes make it hard to process digital transactions.
This digital yuan is less about money and more about data.
Yaya Fanusi is an adjunct senior fellow at the nonprofit think tank Center for a New American Security in Washington, D.C. He's been studying digital currencies for the past 6 years, and he says China's new currency is not as anonymous as it claims.
The central bank has talked about there being controllable anonymity, which really means it's anonymous horizontally, right? The users that are using it don't necessarily know the identity of everyone that they're interacting with. But vertically, it's not anonymous. The central bank is at the top with information on all the users.
China's central bank has promised to protect users' privacy. For now, people can choose whether they want to use the digital currency. But the central bank has said that as the country becomes a cashless society, it expects the digital yuan to become the primary way to make transactions.
The Chinese government could force Chinese companies to only accept payment in digital yuan, which would then force the foreign companies, their foreign counterparts for trade. It could ensure that they have to use that.
Central banks have authority to control money supply, but their actions to restrict a digital currency would have a more immediate effect, leaving companies holding that currency all the more vulnerable. For example, Fanusi says China's central bank could put an expiration date on the digital money, similar to how lottery winnings have to be spent before a certain date.
It means that the Chinese government could set up a whole lot of things to have your currency maybe valid or invalid based on its own priorities. This is almost like handing over the keys to your business or to your finance department in some ways, because you really can't control what at the end of the day may happen with the funds that you're holding.
While there are privacy concerns, Fanusi says digital currencies can create more efficient monetary policy and counter criminal activities. China's central bank said its digital yuan system would help combat money laundering, gambling, and terrorism financing.
我们会坚持中心化这管理。
Meanwhile, the central bank is also looking into ways to make international transactions possible in digital yuan. And Fenusi says there's a big variable that'll determine if that's going to work.
Will foreign governments allow their businesses and citizens to hold digital yuan and use it? It's not a given that all other countries are going to transact with this and will, because of the privacy, the data issues. So this is really to be determined.
While there's no set date for a national rollout, some officials have said the digital currency could be ready for wider use next February during the 2022 Winter Olympics in Beijing.
I think there is an element of showing off for the big international audience. We have a central bank digital currency that we're using. We're the only country, the biggest country that's doing it.
And China isn't alone in this experiment. According to one survey of central banks, 86% of them from the US to Japan are exploring these types of currencies. For early digital yuan winners like Huang, he says the trial went smoothly, and if the currency does go mainstream, he expects the surveillance aspect will matter less to him.
就是你的便利和被监控的部分，它一定是会被让渡的，因为我觉得我的消费习惯已经被培养了之后，其实我很难摆脱这样的更便捷的支付方式吧。
They're constantly monitored by facial recognition cameras that are able to instantly put a face to a name. Now, the Chinese are also ranked, given a mark out of a possible 950 points. A score in the 700s is considered good. Around the 500 mark is not. For now, the number is a sort of bank credit rating, keeping track of everyone's spending habits.
I think being ranked is a good thing. A society has to have rules.
It forces us to be well behaved.
It may seem scary, but it's just like that here. We're used to it, and anyway, we don't have a choice.
But in an effort to keep all of its subjects in line, Beijing is taking the system a step further in 2020. It's aggregating data gathered by banks, private companies, and the state to rate if someone's a good or bad citizen.
By using the most data possible, the so-called big data, the system will play an important role in rebuilding a moral society.
The state will go over every detail of a person's life with a fine-tooth comb. Their financial situation, spending habits, career, even behavior on social media. Criticizing the government online or displaying outward signs of wealth is a no-no. On the other hand, praising the party or giving blood increases your social credit. Xiao Wen Wang is a model citizen. She lives in Nanjing, a testing ground for social ranking. Married with a child, she has a job in a retirement home, no debts, and she wouldn't dream of jaywalking.
As a good citizen, I respect the rules of the road. If I didn't, I'd lose points on my social credit.
In theory, everything can be taken into account in the social score, even the most innocuous errands like supermarket shopping. When Xiao Wen Wang makes an electronic payment, her purchases tell the state a lot about her. Buying cigarettes would count against her. On the other hand, nappies show she's an attentive mother. Beer could indicate alcoholism. She'd be better off buying water. In this pilot city of 8 million people, there are only 18,000 model citizens. For Xiao Wen Wang, there are perks to be had, such as paying half price for the bus.
I get discounts for all public services, even at museums. And the library is free for me, thanks to my score.
A good score brings benefits, but people with low scores lose rights. The cinema names and shames people considered untrustworthy, plastering their details, even their addresses, across big screens.
It's a matter of principle. Those people have to be condemned.
Those people aren't honest, so they have to pay the price.
It's only right to pay your debts. You have to blacklist those that don't.
The Supreme Court has created a blacklist for so-called bad citizens, those whose ratings have dropped to 0. On it are companies, but also 23 million people to date. Among them is this journalist Liu Hu. He got a little too close to uncovering corruption among high-profile party members. After being sued for defamation by the subject of a story he'd written, he was blacklisted. He only realized when he tried to buy a train ticket and was told he was banned from traveling.
That tells me I'm still on the blacklist.
Punished because he's been branded untrustworthy by the state.
Once you're blacklisted, you can no longer get a bank loan, start a business, buy an apartment, or even send your children to a private school.
Yu Hu is among a tiny minority of people who have dared to criticize the system, which some are calling a digital dictatorship.
I worry, because I think many people like me will be deprived of individual freedoms, and all of us will live with restrictions of one kind or another.
After our meeting, Yu Hu learned that his name had been removed from the blacklist, but he still has a long way to go if he doesn't want to languish at the bottom of the social credit hierarchy.